Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking about the Nashville food scene. We have with us Steve Cavendish. He's editor of the Nashville Banner. He has, of course, been a food critic for the Nashville scene, also been with the city paper. So we're talking food here in Nashville. I'm going to go back to the phones, then I have several more questions. Let's go to Mike here. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Ben. How you doing? And good evening to your guest. The reason I was calling, I know he mentioned Lovelace as far as some of the old original restaurants around here that do like comfort food or whatever. But there was a lot of other places. We used to be a place called Mary's Barbecue Pit on Jefferson Street.
Mary's is great.
Right. That's for years. Everybody knew about. Trailer truck drivers would park their big rigs, would unhitch their trailers right under the Jefferson Street Bridge, and then take the truck cab itself and come around to Mary's, especially on Thursday, Fridays, and Saturday nights. People from the fraternity, sorority parties, you see people you saw at the park, and it was just like a festive affair, kind of like the old Prince's back on UN Lane. But, and then there was the Sweats, and I'm not talking about the Sweats restaurant of today. I'm talking about OG Father Sweat, Mr. Sweat, who used to be back there, and the wife, and true, the best soul food you've ever had. Things have changed since he's died, and some of the other brothers. But that place and a lady named Mrs. White over by Harry used to sell right out of her house fresh fish sandwiches, huge hamburgers, thick as I don't know what. And so there's a lot of history a lot of people don't know. And a lot of people don't know the true history to this day of hot chicken. And we cannot ever forget that Miss Prince's Chicken is the original OG hot chicken, period. There have been some other people who have come into play. 400 Degrees. I like a key. She does a great job.
She does a great job.
And Big Shakes now is good, but Big Shakes, you left out my chicken the other night. I didn't even get to know what it tastes like from Grubhub. And then the night before at Big Shakes, you messed up my order. So get on top of that.
Wow, Mike. All right. Man. All right, well, thank you, Mike. Thanks. Wow, look at that. All right, he's talking a little bit about hot chicken. He says people don't know the history. We can talk about that. But what do you think of everything he said?
Well, I mean, he nailed some great places. Mary's is phenomenal. Sweats. I was in Sweats a few weeks ago. Sweats is still really, really good. Maybe it's not the OG, but it's still really good. But there's a bunch of great places around town, and it's interesting. The stuff he's mentioning is very much sort of kind of old Southern kind of place. There was a place over on Lafayette that just closed called Dan Gear's, and if you know, I love hot chicken. And we can talk about that here in a minute, but just like regular fried chicken, man, Dan Gear's was maybe my favorite place in town. I was really sorry to see it close, but those places are, I mean, a lot of those are old Southern. You know, if you had to say what was the original to Nashville. The meat and three,
right?
And there's still good meat and threes around town. Maybe the best is Arnold's over on 8th. But you know, I grew up going to a place called Haptown's. You go to Haptown. It was over behind Greer Stadium. It's where Gabby's Burgers is right now. As a matter of fact, you go in Gabby's, you can see. He's got a little plaque to the original Haptown's, But Haptown's was great, and you would go in, and the meat and three was the meat and three they made. It wasn't like you had like a big smorgasbord of choices there. You might have had like one or two choices, but nothing real big. But man, that Nashville has had this kind of history of comfort food, and this legacy of it, and we've still got a lot of really good comfort food here today.
That's great. All right, let's go to Ann. Hello, Ann.
Good evening. I'm sorry to be negative 6 calls in a row, but you may have already addressed this. My family for 30 years was patron to one of our finest family places in Nashville, and that was the Spaghetti Factory. And we lost them, and we know why we lost them. And my question is, will they ever rebuild? And if not, how close is the next one going to be? And that's my call.
Thank you, man. Spaghetti Factory was impacted by the bombing downtown.
Sure.
It's closed now. What about that?
You know, I don't know if we're getting the original Spaghetti Factory back. You know, I remember first time I went to that old Spaghetti Factory was in high school, and it was the kind of place where it was just fancy enough that it was, you know, it was a restaurant that you could go to, and you could take a date to, but it wasn't too expensive. And you were going downtown, so you felt like it was special. And so, you know, when you're 16, 17 years old, you think, oh well, I'm going to the Spaghetti Factory. This is going to be, you know, I'm doing well here. I'm showing well. And I don't know if we're going to get it back. Some of that's economics. You know, the price per square foot downtown is just astounding. You know, independent restaurants, and the Spaghetti Factory is not an independent restaurant, it's a chain. But, you know, the independent restaurants can't afford to go in downtown. You know, you can't, the you know, $35, $40, $45 a square foot is just not, doesn't work with the economics and kind of the floor space and what you need for a big kitchen. And you know, so what you see is like the big new high-end restaurants that are going in downtown are all attached to hotels because the hotels are subsidizing them all. And that's where we were talking about celebrity chefs a little while ago. You know, that's where the celebrity chefs are coming in, is because the JW Marriotts of the world want to put like a super high-end, you know, steakhouse.
And do they expect locals to go there, or are they mainly just going for tourists?
I think that, you know, well, they can't exist on just tourists alone. They have to have a certain amount of locals. They're catering though to a business crowd. I mean, it's similar to, I mean, the Palm is the same way. You know, the crowd at the Palm is not, you know, it's not a big locals crowd, but it might be like, especially at lunch, you know, it might be like half the kind of lawyers downtown kind of eating over at the Palm. But the places like the Spaghetti Factory are getting sort of priced out, and so what you see is, you know, 5 blocks away from there, at like 5th and Broad, you see these conglomerations that have like 30 restaurants in sort of a place, and I think you're that food hall kind of thing is what we're going to see going forward, and they're mostly going to, if you have smaller and locals, and there's a Prince's that's there in 5th and Broad. You know, that's how they can kind of make it affordable to be downtown. But the Spaghetti Factory, I just don't see it coming back.
So that's iconic. And Ann, I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, you nailed that. All right, you have been a food critic. Mm-hmm. I want to ask what that's like. You will go in, get a meal, and then you have to write about it.
Yep.
And so how often are you critical? I mean, how often are you like, how difficult is that? What are you kind of looking for? Talk about being a food critic.
Sure. So there's a couple things. One is you have to eat enough of the menu in order to have kind of have an idea about it. The best reviews are based on eating a lot of the menu, on eating at multiple times, so not just going in one time, you know, and trying to see them at different times. So like, it's one thing if it's like a Friday night and they're fully staffed and they're striped up and ready to go and everybody's, you know, the kitchen's humming and everything's great. What about like a Tuesday night when it's slow? What's it like then? You know, do you get the same level of service? Do you get the same level of food? So you want it to be a broad representation of what they're doing. I think the best critics try to be a bit of an advocate for what the average diner is going to be, and you know, think about things like price. Think about things like quality and relative quality. I mean, like for instance, if you're reviewing a super high-end place that you know is super expensive, yeah, it's more, you know, that yes, it's more expensive than the barbecue sandwich, and so you don't you don't sit there and go, well, this is not, I can have a meal for $10. I don't have to pay $100 for this meal. Well, they're not. That's not what they're selling. They're
Right.
selling the $100 meal. So evaluate them kind of based on what they're doing, but make sure that they're providing quality for what that money is.
Now, in the movies, it seems like they know the film critic or the food critic is over there at the table, and
Right.
they're all like freaked out and they're running around. I mean, do you call ahead? Do they often know? Like, do they know you're coming, or once you're there, do they go, "Oh my goodness, look at this! This is important"? And do you think you got some kind of special treatment, or what about all that?
I know, for instance, that I've gotten a little bit better treatment sometimes if they see me. I would often book under, and I'm not reviewing. I've reviewed a few restaurants here on a freelance basis recently, but I haven't been a reviewer regularly for a few years now. But I would often book under a different name.
You didn't want them to know.
You don't want them to know.
Okay.
And if you show up, and I mean, my face is, my face is on the internet. It's not hard to find me. You can't really hide from it. But some places just don't care about it. I mean, and the restaurant review has sort of changed in the era of social media and in sort of consumer generated media. So, for instance, when you go and eat at a place, you might pop up Yelp and tell Yelp, hey, this was 5 stars or 1 star or whatever else. And I guarantee you, the restaurants are paying a lot of attention to that. They may be even paying more attention to that. If you go give somebody a 1-star review on Yelp, you're going to have their attention probably faster than if I, as a food critic, killed them for 1,000 words in the Nashville scene.
That is true. That's kind of a new iteration of all of this.
And it's because it's so ubiquitous, and because this thing right here, this phone, gives you more information.
Yeah.
And is so immediate to so many to so many diners, and whether it's Yelp or kind of any one of another half a dozen other kind of places that people go, or just like kind of like the reviews that get aggregated into Google, they pay attention to it because they and one of my favorite things is a few years ago. Restaurant industry people are kind of darkly humorous, and on a Monday night when a lot of restaurants are closed, at one restaurant, they had this industry gathering, and people came in and read their worst Yelp reviews out loud, and it was great, and it was often profane and a lot of fun, but they carry it around. I mean.
They would know their worst Yelp.
Oh yeah, and
it stings.
this one chef, and I won't name him, read the review, and then like gave like a defense, like immediately afterwards. She said, we got this review like the week we opened, when they kind of hadn't shaken everything out. But as a food critic, what you want to do is you want to be fair, and you want to make sure that. You're reviewing something in a way that helps a reader make an economic decision, and so you try not to kill a place.
We have to break. But have you ever killed a place? I mean, do you think you feel like it? Wow. So.
And well, I mean, they stayed open, but I mean, but I wrote like a horrifically negative review one time in the Scene, and it cost the Scene money. They pulled their advertising from the Scene,
right.
But to the Scene's credit, and this gets into the kind of independence piece of it. You want to go someplace where you want to read somebody's review that you can trust, and the Scene is independent, and they don't, they're not influenced by somebody's advertising. As a matter of fact, my publisher came over and said, if you want to write that again, write it again. I don't care.
Wow, that is so interesting. And that is good for the Scene. All right, we will take a break. Come back. There are more calls, so hold on the line. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.